Unemployment is one of the biggest challenges that we have. People are working jobs where they don't feel satisfied, where the challenge doesn't feel worth it.
Our work is in service to actual, real, living human beings. Don't think we should forget that.
We expect the technology to solve the problem.
Yes.
We expect the technology to do all these things for us. There's a person on the other side. He's sitting with an award-winning landscape designer, founder of Organic Kitchens.
It doesn't really matter what the storms are because I am in the exact storm that I'm supposed to be in.
The challenges start to present themselves as opportunities. We need to work on that mindset shift because we have a lot of challenges. Has been featured in Conde Nast House Garden SA, Garden and Home, Elle Magazine.
I have to take that creativity and just kind of create realistic environment. It's important for the sort of habits that you want to create. Hearing a client say, my kids are outside more.
Yo, welcome back to the C.Cast. So last week we mentioned that we wanted to give you guys an announcement, and we are super excited to share with you that we are going to do a giveaway at 1,000 subscribers. So we mentioned that this is a community. You guys have invested a lot into the growth of this community. We literally have doubled subscribers in the last month or so, and we want to continue that momentum by giving back to you. So what we're going to do is, by the time we reach 1,000 subscribers, we're going to give away a laptop to someone in our community. So your mom's uncle, brother, sister, cousins, moms, aunties, whoever, we need you to tell them to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's get to 1,000 subscribers, and when we get there, we're going to give away a laptop to a member of our community, and hopefully that's going to help empower you to be able to achieve whatever it is that you're working on. And yeah, thank you for being a part of the journey. That is our announcement, and I don't want to take too much more of your time, so just a quick reminder to like, share, subscribe, and let's get into the next episode.
Yeah, this is like way overdue. Way overdue. But yeah, no, we're back. Another episode. If I'm not mistaken, it's episode 30. We don't have Pearl in the studio, so Pearl's our producer.
Okay.
She normally tells us what episode it is.
Okay.
I normally lose track because we are recording constantly. But today is going to be a special one.
Yeah.
We're cooking something up.
Look, I've got my spatula, all right? I'm ready to go.
Let's go. Let's go. So we've got a really great guest here today. We've got Joy Phala, who is a very esteemed guest. You know how we do it. We do it every time. We bring the real people who have been doing amazing things.
So we've got an expert in creating outdoor spaces that make everyday living an extraordinary experience. Yeah. And a lot of people will be wondering today, what is a landscaping designer doing on a podcast about tech, creativity, and entrepreneurship? And I think that a lot of people, they'll think of landscaping and they won't think of that being in the digital world or being in the creative world. But when I look at the work that you've been doing, and Joy and I, we often work in the same workspaces. And I must say, you're probably one of the most hardworking people that I've ever come across in my life. But one thing that I've noticed is you're always on your computer.
Yeah.
And I really wanted us to do this episode today because a lot of the time when people think about tech and creativity, they'll think about social media marketing, digital marketing. They'll think about space exploration and all these technical things. But the truth of the matter is that this day and age, tech is involved in almost everything.
Yeah.
So I think today is really just about breaking that stereotype and diving into the world of Joy Phala. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Wow. Look, my world is all about tech and creativity, right? As a landscape designer, I'm first a creative person, and then I have to take that creativity and just kind of create realistic environments and create environments that are going to be relevant to whoever the client is, right? Technology for us is a way to communicate those ideas, right? It is also a way to maybe even develop those ideas in a more efficient way. So obviously, as a designer, the first thing you learn how to do is to draw. And one of the few very basic and rudimentary technology items or equipment is going to be your drawing board and your pencil. So we start there always. And I think I still use that quite a bit. I still need that pen to paper mind connection before I even take that and put it on the computer. So one, it's an enabling tool. Two, it is a way for me to communicate what I'm thinking, because as soon as you meet the client, they tell you the brief, they tell you exactly what you want, what they want. And you have to take those ideas and enhance them and give them something that is exactly what they want, but even more. You have to give them an environment that they may not have even thought it was possible, but it's just the right thing. But all of this is in your head. You have to transport the client to your head. And technology is the best way for me to be able to do that. So I then take those ideas, I put them into the technology that we're using, whether it's SketchUp, whether it's Lumion, whatever it is that's going to enable me to communicate those ideas. I draft that out, and then now the client and I can see what's in my head. Yeah.
That's amazing. And people underestimate how difficult it is to take an idea that lives in your mind and bringing that into reality.
Oh, yeah.
And that process is not an easy process. No. But before we dive into the technicalities and like how you do what you do, I think it's very important to just highlight that you are an entrepreneur as well.
Correct.
And you've been building this business and been building a very successful business. A large part of that has come from your online presence and the marketing that you do online and the message that you put out there. But I want us to go back to the beginning.
Okay.
Because we're talking about bringing an idea into reality. And I'm sure at one point, you know, this business, OK Kitchen Gardens, like this was an idea that probably lived in your head at some point, and now it lives in existence. How did that process start? Yeah. Wow. Where did it, like we're talking about, you know, landscaping, we're talking about plants and gardening. Where was that seed planted?
Right. So I grew up in Limpopo. I was raised by my aunt, and she's basically in charge of the family fields. So we have fields in the home, and then we have fields up in the mountains. And just part of everyday routine was growing food, whatever the season was. If it's winter, we are doing winter crops. If it's summer, we are doing summer crops. And it's just part of how we live, right? And obviously at the time, you know, in the village, you don't think this sort of thing is a business. You don't think it's something to sell to people, to make a living and a legacy out of, because technically most people that live there can do exactly what you do. And it's more of a family activity more than it is a business. So when I went to varsity, I didn't study landscape design. I didn't think of myself as a creative person. I've always thought of myself as more analytic, more, you know, numbers and maths. So I studied accounting, largely because my mom said to me, you know what, if you're going to commerce, there's nothing you can't do. There's just, because everything is a transaction, right? So, and she was right. There's really nothing you can't do. I could go into medicine, but I just don't have the stamina for it.
Yeah. I don't have the stomach for it. Like,
that's also true.
Yeah.
But I then, you know, come out of varsity, I joined a management consulting company that is also very IT heavy. And now that I'm saying this, it just sounds like it was just meant to be. But anyway,
what's crazy is like when you look back, it sounds like it's meant to be, but in the moment, you're not
seeing the pattern. You know, you're not seeing it come together. But yeah. I worked for EOH as part of the public sector division, and we did management consulting, so soft business advice, financial regulation compliance. We did business process reengineering and change management, so typical soft management consulting. And then later on, the department started bringing in a bit more of technology, because what we're realizing with our clients is that we can facilitate change, but most of that change is being enabled by technology. And so then we'd say to them, well, this process is working perfectly, but if you introduce this particular piece of tech, then it goes from perfect to efficient, to saving you time, to saving you money, to doing things the right way the first time around. It just eliminates a lot of redundancy. So we went into that. And then I decided I want to study further. So I left EOH and did a postgrad in internal auditing. And then from then, I realized that, what, I'm not sure. Like I'm just going through a phase of transition. In the middle of that, I'm also having children. And when I had my first son, everything just sort of slows down. I don't know, when you become a mom, everything becomes about this little person. And I went through what most women go through, which is postnatal depression during the first year of being a mom. And one of the things that used to make me feel better was if I'm either cooking or if I'm in the garden. The garden took on even more because, I would post whatever we were, growing in the garden and taking things from the garden and putting them into the kitchen and creating meals out of them. And I just post that on Instagram. I wasn't trying to create a business at the time. And I think at the time, my mind frame was, I have this little person. I'm not sure what my career is going to look like going forward. But right now, I have this little person and this is my responsibility. And as I was posting all of this on Instagram, people started asking me to help them with their garden. And I thought, well, people should already know how to do this.
I personally have no idea. Let me just put that out there.
I'm like, what? What do you mean? You mean you don't know how to grow herbs and vegetables and things for yourself? But you know what? It opened my eyes to the fact that we have such different growing experiences, and just depending on where you grew up, what was accessible, what was available to you at the time, you're going to have a very different experience. So what I took for granted as knowledge that should be common turned out to be knowledge that's not common at all, So I went into the business and I started doing vegetable gardens because that's what I knew. That's what I grew up doing. And then as I'm going into people's gardens, they're asking me about other types of plants, that I didn't necessarily grow up with. Roses and lawn, and how do you take care of lawn? And I'm just like, wait a minute. I'm just here for the veggies.
I'm just the girl.
Focus on vegetables, right? But more and more people started to demand this sort of traditional landscaping service from me. And I thought to myself, maybe there's a way that traditional landscape can coexist with organic gardening. And using my previous management consulting experience, I started doing some research, looking at business models, looking at who is out there doing this thing that's in my head that I think might be possible. Because, as soon as you introduce vegetables and other edibles into the landscape, you're creating something that's very different. People are used to traditional landscape design. People are used to vegetable gardens, but they're not used to these two coming together. And how do you do that and present that product in a way that will be appetizing to both groups of people? Because, you're thinking, I'm not going to grow my cabbage in my front yard. And if I'm doing that, it has to be in a way that still makes sense for my garden and for my landscape and for how I want to live. I want my friends to come to my garden and be impressed. And I'm not sure if a cabbage right at the entrance is going to do that, So I then went to study landscape design after, just looking at all the models and all the most of the businesses that were doing this. And I looked at some businesses that were doing what I was thinking in America, and there was some few having the same model in Europe as well. And I thought, well, I've got organic gardening, right? That's what I grew up with, but I don't actually know how to design spaces. So I went to study landscape design, and then I came back and I combined the two.
That's amazing. That's such a beautiful story.
Thank you.
And I want us to go a bit more into those ingredients.
Right.
And then we can go into the recipe of how you put those ingredients together.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that you started out in more of like the rural areas.
Right.
You weren't starting out in a city center.
Right.
And I love that story because we've had previous guests on board. I mean, the previous guest that we had was Talafani, and he was telling us about his story and how he started off also not in the city center economic hub. And I think a lot of people have that kind of beginning.
Right.
So there's a transition phase that you have to go through in order to get from there to, being able to operate a business in the economic hub of South Africa. Right. I'm sure there were some challenges along the way on that journey. What were some of those challenges that you faced?
I think number one, just communicating what I do. I get what I do, right? Most people or my potential customers didn't. I think there is now a fantastic boom in the South African market for this sort of business. But when I was starting out in 2013, going into 2017, it was very difficult to say I'm an edible landscape designer. People understand landscaping and they understand vegetable gardeners. So just communicating that and saying these two can actually coexist. You can have a traditional landscape that is being grown on organic organic gardening principles, and you can still be able to incorporate vegetables and edibles in that space as well, in a way that is aesthetically pleasing, in a way that's stylish. So just communicating that idea and having people understand it was very challenging. And then having to say, there is a design process to this. There is a design process, and then there's an installation process, because people are used to Ubab Jawu, who's going to come in with his team on a van to come and maintain the lawn. They understand that, but they don't see that for the lawn to exist the way that it does, and for all the plants to exist in the space in the way that they exist, in the way that they've been arranged, somebody had to sit down and think about what this garden is going to look like ultimately. That creative process, and then saying to people, I sell this creative process. I don't just bring the plants to the site and start planting. So having to communicate the fact that you sell this creative process and people must pay money for it was very difficult. It was, I remember there was a time when I had to say to people, I do for gardens what architects do for your home, because it's the same process. Obviously, the architectural process is very heavily legislated. The landscape design process, not so much. The landscape architectural process, yes. So I had to say, well, we start off with a plan, ma'am. It's like, I've never heard of plans being done for gardens. And so I'm like, well, it exists, and this is how we do it.
Yes.
So having to communicate that, and having to say, this is a service that I sell, was very challenging.
And getting people to understand the value of it as well.
Correct, yes.
Because people aren't going to pay for something they can't see value in.
Correct, yeah.
That, as you're speaking, I'm relating it to our story as well. Right. Because before we started JD Creations, our digital marketing agency, it was pre-COVID. Right. So a lot of people talk about COVID and how businesses died during COVID. For us, it was the opposite. We actually became more revitalized and gained more opportunity through COVID. Yeah. And the reason why is because people were kind of forced to adopt technology in their processes. They were forced to take their messaging and the communications online. And then through that process, people began to understand the value of doing that. So
and to respect it.
And to respect it as well. So I remember before COVID, we would go and pitch to people and tell them about how we create content. We come and do photography and videography, and we put it online on your social media.
Right.
And no one wanted to listen to us at all.
Yeah.
And then after COVID, you didn't even have to explain it to people. People start coming to you.
Yes.
And I think the thing that's important there is anyone who has an idea, when you have your first idea, not everyone's going to understand it.
No.
And you can't expect people to just understand your idea. Yeah. There's a responsibility on yourself to be able to communicate that idea.
Yeah.
And in a country where we have 12 official languages, which is great, diversity is amazing. Yes. One of the challenges that comes with that is being able to communicate your idea. Mm-hmm. So when you say that one of your challenges was like getting people to understand the value of what you do, how did you manage to get that light bulb to go off in their minds?
Wow. I think number one, being able to attract a client that just gets it.
Okay.
Because now when you have that first client who just gets it, right? And you're not having to go through hoops and loops. And then you produce this thing, okay? You produce this thing and you're able to then present it to people and say, hi, here's what I made.
Yeah. It's that case study, right?
That case study. When you can say, here's what I made. I've made this plan. And this is how this plan has translated into this space. Mm. That first client who got it was the gateway for me to be able to say, actually, this process is important. This process of sitting down and drawing and designing and creating a space and envisioning how people are going to use the space and envisioning what new experiences are going to be lived in this space. That process is important and valuable enough for you to pay for it, because these are the results, right? It's difficult. It takes time. It takes patience. You have to constantly be this bell, ringing your bell all the time to say, hey, I'm a designer. This is what I do.
And it's crazy because that process is difficult because it requires consistent effort with very little return until you get that code cracked.
Yeah.
But then once you get the code cracked, then it opens the floodgates.
It really does.
I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs struggle here.
We struggle because you are balancing so many things. You're balancing first your emotional health. You're balancing where the next check is coming from. You're balancing your own personal life, but also you have the great responsibility of educating your next customer. That's the other bit that helps unlock that thing that says, I understand what you're doing. I get it. It's that constant education. You have to constantly be saying to people, actually, your garden is important. I get that you're investing 10 million in the house, but it's not going to mean much if the surrounding environment does not also communicate value. It's saying to people, your house is wonderful, but you're going to spend you should be spending majority of your time outdoors as well for your own mental health. If you've got small children, that sort of thing becomes very important, because you also don't want children who are constantly on the screen, sort of the couch potato generation. You have to move away from that. So saying to people, your external environment is important. Your indoor-outdoor connection is important. Make it easy for yourself to get out of the house into the garden. It's important for your health. It's important for the sort of habits that you want to create. It's lovely to get into the garden and just literally feel your heart rate go down. That's important. So that constant education is one of the things that helped to just create that transition. You have to create your customer. You have to build up your customer.
For sure. And what I'm getting from what you're saying is that your mental fortitude is so important when it comes to doing that. And you touched on it now. We live in this digital world where we're constantly online.
Right.
We're constantly bombarded with information at levels that are unprecedented, that we've never had to deal with as a human race before if you look back in history. So we're now having to learn how to adapt and evolve. And if you look at the markets in which we operate, you see a lot of mental health services coming into the forefront because a lot of people are struggling mentally. And there's something that we see in our industry a lot. I mean, we work at social media, so it's very easy to get sucked in and drawn into that. One thing that's helped me a lot is mindfulness and meditation, just to be able to disconnect from the constant. You need to be, and being an entrepreneur, on top of that, it adds even more things that you have to be on top of the social media and all these other things that you're being bombarded with. So mental health is what I'm getting from you is very important.
It is.
And now when it comes to that consistency, when it comes to being a mom entrepreneur, how is it that you are able to manage your mental health? Does it have to do with the spaces that you're creating? I'd like for you to really kind of tie that into what you do, because I think one of the value propositions of what you do that you mentioned now is that it's a way to disconnect. Your space and your surrounding is so important. So as someone who specializes in building spaces and surroundings that help with your mental capacity, how were you able to keep that consistency and keep that resilience on your journey?
I think as a mom, you aim to do the best for your children and for your family structure. You always aim to do the best. But I think most moms are what we call, people who are depressed but high functioning. And it's just because there are so many moving pieces of your life, a mom, an entrepreneur. So one of the things that I've been blessed with is a great support structure, right? I'm not worried about if I have to, say, for example, work late. I'm not worried about who's looking after my kids. I'm not worried about that sort of thing. I know that's been taken care of, right? If say, for example, I can't really say that the spaces that I create contribute to my mental health. It's more for the client's mental health, because I'm still running a business. I still have to make sure that those spaces happen. So I have to take on that pressure to make sure that those spaces happen. But one of the things that I suppose contributes positively to my mental health is that I actually enjoy the process. I find such satisfaction and such fulfillment in the actual work itself that satisfaction helps to keep my mind balanced. So even if I'm dealing with a difficult client, or I'm dealing with a difficult supplier, or my team is just not getting things right, the idea that I'm doing exactly the thing that I've promised myself to do is so satisfying in a way that it doesn't really matter what the storms are at that present moment in time, because I am in the exact storm that I'm supposed to be in. Sure. And that is the most reassuring. It is the most comforting. It is like the most satisfying feeling. So knowing that even though there's pressure, but this is actually the pressure that I want, because it is the pressure that's going to get me to the point that I have promised myself I want to be. I am in the exact pressure that I need to be. I am experiencing just the right amount of anxiety that I need to experience, because It's not gonna be easy. It's not gonna be smooth, but I am in the fear that I need to be. I'm in the anxiety that I need to be. I'm in the storm that I need to be. This is not a useless storm. It's not a storm without purpose. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be, because I'm finding satisfaction in the bad and in the good.
That is phenomenal. That is such a powerful concept. And I think if you look at most successful entrepreneurs, they have that mindset.
Yeah.
And I think it really comes from a sense of self-mastery and finding a purpose in what you're doing.
Right.
Because once you've got that purpose, you start to kind of want the challenging situations.
Yes.
Because you know that on the other side of each of those challenging situations, there's going to be some sort of reward,
Absolutely.
satisfaction of overcoming it.
Yeah.
And it takes time to get there, because you have to do that repeatedly in order for you to see that reward repeatedly. And then once you've done that repeatedly in your mind, you build that connection between challenge and reward and satisfaction.
Right.
But a lot of people listening to this are at the point in the beginning.
Yes.
And we live in South Africa. Unemployment is one of the biggest challenges that we have. And because of that challenge, a lot of people are working jobs where they don't feel satisfied, where the challenge doesn't feel worth it.
Right.
And I think that's where self-mastery and finding your purpose really comes into play, because if you're able to find that why of why you're doing what you're doing, the challenges start to present themselves as opportunities instead of challenges.
Yes.
And I think in South Africa, we really need to work on that mindset shift, because we have a lot of challenges in South Africa.
Yeah.
If we can switch that mindset to viewing those challenges as opportunities and finding ways to get satisfaction out of solving those challenges, I could see us really progressing a lot as a continent.
Yeah.
So from your personal experience, how did you master that within yourself?
You have to give yourself permission to go through it. The only way through it is to really go through it. You have to also be comfortable with the storm. Be comfortable in the uncomfortable situation. Allow yourself, if you're working a job, say, for example, that you don't love, don't let the job be the only thing in your life. Don't let that be the biggest piece of your life. There are other interests. Follow those interests, follow that curiosity, see where it leads you. I came into this business because I was curious. It wasn't because I was dreaming one day a young girl from the village will be a landscape designer. No, I was dreaming of being a CA. That's what I was dreaming about.
way less romantic.
You know what I mean? So understand there isn't a job, say, for example, that is not going to give you a reward. No matter how difficult it is, no matter how difficult your boss is, you're getting a paycheck at the end of the day. Number one, you're able to pay for your bond or your rent or whatever the situation is. That is something to be happy about, no matter what the challenge is. But also sometimes we kind of make things difficult for...
Hey, hold on. I just need to remind you very quickly to like, share, and subscribe, and leave a comment down below about what you think about this episode. We need to be able to tell the algorithm on YouTube that we are creating content that is valuable. So please engage with this content, whether you're listening to it on YouTube or on Spotify or whatever platform. Please engage. It just helps us reach more people, brings more people into the community, which means more access to knowledge and opportunities for you, a member of the community. So please don't forget to engage on this video or this audio podcast and leave a like, comment, or subscribe and give it a share. Thank you so much. We'll hop back into the episode.
Ourselves, because yes, maybe you may not be enthusiastic about it. So because you're not enthusiastic about it, you're not sold on the task that you're meant to be doing at that moment. Because you're not sold on it, you're going to procrastinate. You're going to do it. It's not going to be the most efficient way to do it. It's not going to come out to be the best.
You're not aligned with what you want to be.
Not aligned with what you're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
So that alignment is important, but place this phase of your life It's just a phase. It's just another path to where you're supposed to be. And sometimes where you're supposed to be is not very clear in the moment, but do your best in that moment. Because yes, you may have a difficult working environment, you may have a difficult boss, you may have a job that you don't like, but you still have to live with you. So you are still responsible for you. So whatever it is that you're doing in the moment, do your best, because you have to still live with the results of that. And the more of your best you are doing, the more you're practicing the muscle of just showing up and doing and just giving it your all. So by the time you get to the thing that you're meant to be doing, you've already developed that muscle of consistency, the muscle of faithfulness, the muscle of stewardship. You are ready for it. And you're not always going to be ready for it. I wasn't ready for this. It's not like I've been preparing all my life, but give yourself the chance. Give yourself the chance.
Sure. Those are such words of wisdom. Where did you learn this?
Wow. Sure. Where did I learn it? So I was raised by my aunt majority of the time. And my aunt she's now in her 80s. The first business I ever had, she literally, I was 8 years old. She handed me a packet of sweets. You know, the sweets you get, and it's like a mix of different sweets in the packet. She gave me that and she said, go sell this at school. I was 8 years old. I was in grade 3. Okay. And I sold sweets right throughout my primary school years. At some point, we had a spaza shop in the house. So it moved from just selling packets of sweets to a bakery. A Sasko Sam, delivering bread in our house so that we could. So she instilled that work ethic in me. It wasn't like I was enthusiastic about selling things at school while other kids were playing and learning, but it gave me a job and a sense of responsibility at a very young age. I'm also a Christian, so that helps a lot. It helps to keep my mind in check. It does help, like during the day, if I'm frustrated, I'm just like, Lord, okay, I'm open to ideas. What do you think I should do in the situation? So yeah, I was raised by really wonderful women, and yeah, and life really. I think if you pay attention, long enough, these things repeat themselves. These lessons repeat themselves in your life, and you just at some point you just kind of have to just grasp it, yeah,
and accept and learn from it. That's so interesting that you mentioned that, because you're not the first person that's mentioned starting from a spaza shop. Yes. And a lot of people view that as like lower work, or like a lot of people view that as, oh no, I'm not gonna like sell sweets.
Yeah.
And I think we've created a culture where the class that you are a part of is very important, or which the class that you look like you're a part of is very important. Yeah. So you get a lot of people that are looking like they have the iPhone and they have the BMW and they living soft life, as you like to say. But then behind the scenes, you actually learn, okay, there's actually a lot of debt, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of pressure. And I'm wondering, like, where does that come from? Like, is that something you've seen as well? Have you picked up on as well? Or
yeah, look, we are living in a generation where appearances are very important. Okay. What you wear, what you drive, how you speak, how you keep yourself physically. For some reason, that is now in the forefront. But I think one has to always remember, like I said, you have to live with you. You're waking up every morning to the real you.
Yeah.
Without the iPhone, without the BMW, you still have to live with you. So for me, being authentic and just accepting your vulnerability, that you're not perfect, actually. this picture that you've created of yourself is not you. It would be nice if the authentic you is more towards the picture that you've created. And that would be wonderful. But that is not necessarily who you are. And being able to live in that vulnerability, it just takes off so much of the pressure. I don't want that kind of pressure. I'm okay with pressure of trying to build something and trying to get it somewhere, but I don't want the pressure of how I think people perceive me. I would love for people to perceive me based on perhaps how I've impacted their lives, whether it's with a conversation or with the work that I've done for them. That's real. I feel like that is something that is tangible and it's real and it's authentic and it's an experience.
People won't forget.
People won't forget.
People will forget the guy who's revving his BMW off across the road. Like, that person's not going to go home and think, oh, that guy was driving such a nice BMW. Like, who was he? Like, people don't care.
They really don't care. And it's exhausting. You know how exhausting it is to just keep up a facade. It's a lot. I enjoy relationships with clients, with friends, with people where I can really be myself, right? And even if, say, for example, thinking of the most vulnerable position that you could be in, say, and you have a project and things are just going south, being able to say to the client, this is the situation we're in. Because these are people that you're working with. This is the situation that we're in. This is how we think we can get out of it. But this is where we are. And you will see kindness. You will see such acceptance. You will see such a coming together. You will see such a support from clients just because you were able to reveal the reality of who you are. The reality of whatever challenges you may be going through at that moment, trying to get their job to them, trying to complete their work. There is such support, there is such strength in being able to be authentic with people, because it's like they don't have to be imagining what's going on with you. They know exactly what's going on with you. And they're like, okay, these are the challenges, this is how we're going to solve it. Instead of them ruminating in their mind to say, but what's going on here? Just be honest.
Yeah.
Oh, just be honest. You'll see such support.
There's this one, I don't know if you listen to Stormzy, but there's this one lyric from Stormzy and he says, just be real. If you can't do it, just be honest.
Be honest. Be honest.
Literally.
Just be honest. You will, look, man, these are people you're working with. You're also a person. You're not perfect. You are going to make mistakes. You're going to disappoint people. But when you're determined to just do the best so that you can and say, okay, maybe at the time you don't have the resources to do the best that you can, but you are able to mobilize resources and say, just give me 2 days. I'll sort this out. But this is the situation.
Yeah, it's that focusing on the optimistic side of what you have. And the first step towards getting more blessings is being thankful for the blessings that you have. Yeah. Because if you aren't thankful for the blessings that you have, you don't realize everything that you have at your disposal. Yes. And one thing that we're great at as South Africans and Africans is we operate from limited resources. So we're great at finding creative ways to use those resources to solve a problem.
Right.
Other people in first world countries don't necessarily have that same luxury, even though we would view it as a challenge and something difficult to overcome. In my mind, it's actually a luxury because it forces us to be creative. It forces us to be innovative.
Right.
And that is what's sought out for in the global space that we operate in.
Yes.
People want to work with people that are creative and innovative.
Yes.
That's why we're in such high demand around the world.
Yeah.
But now this optimism that we're talking about, coming from a place where things are scarce in our country, it's a difficult thing to do. It can feel draining sometimes, and it can feel like it takes a lot to constantly focus on that positive outlook. I think what's important in being able to do that is seeing the purpose of doing that. Right. Why is it important that we do that? Right. Which leads me to my question. Right. What is your why? What is the thing that drives you to be sitting in the workspaces at 11 o'clock at night when I've seen you there. We've been there together.
Why are you telling people my operating hours?
I just need to know. We don't worry about the operating hours, right? We're just putting placeholder numbers. They're not real numbers, okay? We just try to look like we work hard, okay? But I think the thing that's more important is, what is that why that pushes you to push through all of these challenges that you faced in your career?
Look, the work that I do is very transformative. I'll give you an example. I did some work for a client in Bryanston a few years ago. And it's a large property, but you know, when property moves from one person to the next, and whoever comes in wants to change things and make it more their space. So because it's gone through so many transitions, it got to a point where it didn't make sense, right? You say, for example, and I'm going to be very graphic, you've got a red stoop, a kidney-shaped pool that has these Tuscan tiles, and then you've got a pool house with some gray paving, and all of those colors and textures that you walk through that space, and it's frustrating. You're frustrated, you're frustrated, and you don't know what it is that's frustrating you. That is the feeling that my client had at the time, and she was like, look, the space has beautiful infrastructure. It's got a pool, it's got a pool house, it's a lovely home. But I'm just frustrated walking through the space. And I was just like, there's just too much going on. Just too many colors that are fighting each other, too many textures, too many materials that are going on here. And that's why you're feeling frustrated. So we came in and we redesigned the space. We aligned the material. We made sure that the colors were making sense. We made sure that textures were making sense. And the simpler things were, the better. And when we left, she said to me, I feel like such a weight lifted off of my shoulders when I walk through the space. I'm not feeling frustrated. I'm feeling relaxed. That is what keeps me working at 11 o'clock in the co-working space. Yeah. That transformative effect of the work that we do, hearing a client say, my kids are outside more now. In fact, they prefer being outside than being on the screen in the home. Hearing a client say, Saturdays we garden now. Saturdays we're planting seeds. Hearing a client say, I'm able to eat healthier, knowing that the stuff came from my garden, it's organic, I'm not putting chemicals in here that are going to hurt me. Or saying, I don't have allergies to certain things anymore because I'm not buying from the store with products that are infected with insecticides and pesticides. Because my food is clean, there's certain things I'm not allergic to anymore. That is the thing that keeps me going, because it makes me feel like my work matters.
That's amazing. And I think that's the secret ingredient to your success, because that impact that you have on other people always comes back.
It comes back, yeah.
And I think people don't realize how it comes back. So could you explain how it comes back?
Number one, it comes back because you then get the feeling that you are walking in a purpose, because you're able to do something that transformative for somebody. It just, that joy
just has
boomerangs.
That impact.
It has that impact. Number two, obviously, then you get these referrals, clients referring you from, so that's more business, that's more money coming in, you're able to do more, right? But there's that almost intangible effect of the work, in that you are seen as good. I don't know why that is important, but it is important. You are seen as good, not because you're talented, but just because you actually care. I think that for me, I met a client recently. She's just like, you're so relatable. It's like you care about this. And I do care. It's not just about the money, but like for me, the process and just being able to create that sort of impact in people's lives. But because you have planted a seed of positivity in somebody else's life, for me, it comes back to that rippling effect of the business growing. It comes back to attracting talent and people to work with that can just propel me forward. It comes back in all those invisible, intangible ways that just make everything better.
Yeah. And it's that value chain. We always talk about this on the podcast, because when you go to someone who doesn't have much and you say, no, you need to give, the first response is, I don't have anything to give.
I don't have anything, yeah.
And what I'm hearing from your story is like, we all start from different beginnings, but something that we will always have is the ability to care.
Right.
The ability to give someone a smile when you see them.
Yes.
Those little things, you might not view that as valuable, but to the person who receives it, like let's say you're going into a meeting and now you walking past the receptionist. If that receptionist is having a bad day and now someone comes in and just gives them a big smile and says, hello, how are you today? That can be so valuable to that person. And when you give that, it comes back, whether it be the receptionist next time, they don't require you to now sign the form because they like you, or it just makes your life a little bit easier.
Of course, they're giving you more grace now.
Exactly.
The security guard is not having to ask you so many questions when you walk through the gate because you treated him with respect the first time you met him. I find, and maybe this is off topic, but I feel like South African men are so deficient of respect and just love that if you show them even just a tiny bit of that, it makes things so much
huge difference.
It makes a difference in ways that you can't even imagine. I mean, I have a scenario right now where there's a client I'm courting, but I'm not able to get to them directly. And I'm literally speaking to the security guard. And the security guard is the one bringing me into the space. And it's just because the first time I met him, I treated him with respect.
Yeah.
So that it's not a thing that you're going to learn in an MBA course. It's not a thing that you are going to learn, behind a desk. It's everyday human experiences. And I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, I don't think we should forget that. I think we should always keep in the forefront that our work is in service to actual, real, living human beings. Whether you're doing that through tech or face-to-face, you are still serving somebody somewhere, and that counts.
And I think that's where in tech space, we often lose that element a lot because we expect the technology to solve the problems.
Yes.
We expect the technology to do all these things for us. Right. At the end of the day, we sometimes forget that there's a person on the other side of that screen.
Right.
So when you're creating content, it's not about putting out content.
No.
It's about how does your content impact the person on the other side of the screen?
Right.
Because if it impacts them in a positive way, if it gives them something, that person will return that in the form of a like, the form of a comment, maybe it's the form of a share, maybe it's the form of a recommendation, whatever it may be. A lot of the way that gets returned to you on a consistent basis can, build up over time into something that can have economic benefits. And that's what our entire business is built off of operating in that space and offering value to people on the other side of the screen. And through that, we're able to help build these businesses. And I've seen you do that too. If you go and have a look at your content, the message that you share through all of your interviews, whether it be on radio, whether it be content that you're sharing online, there's a lot of value in that. And then there's also value in the experience of working with you, which is what I've seen has been your differentiating factor, and it's really cool to see that. And I'm glad that we had the opportunity to speak with you today on like that journey and how it started, where you are now. But now I want us to focus a little bit more on the future.
Yeah.
What is there in the roadmap for Joy Phala in the future?
Sure. Look, I want to, we've been operating in the residential space quite a bit, and I think that's always going to be our primary customer. I am wanting to do a lot more corporate work. I'm wanting to do a lot more corporate gardens, whether it be in the form of designing and installing corporate gardens. We are doing something new this year, which is maintaining gardens, because what we've realized is that, you know, a garden installation is a big home improvement project, and it's big budgets that we're working with. So at the end of the day, you want to be able to protect that investment, and most clients want to be able to protect that investment. And one of the ways to do it is to keep the garden looking good, right? So we're doing a lot of maintenance work at the moment, and we just sort of pushing quite a bit of that portion of the business out quite a bit. So I want to do a lot more corporate gardens. We're doing quite a bit of maintenance work. We've had started Joy's Garden Club a couple of years ago, but we had gone on a holiday of sorts. But we're bringing that back a lot more.
What is Joy's Garden?
Joy's Garden Club is basically an online club that we started, again, because of COVID. And, you know, people were at home more, and we thought, you know what, why don't we start offering courses to show people how to grow their own food and how to take care of their plants. And that's basically it. It's just this online community where I can offer courses and offer, you know, remote support to gardeners around the country. And yeah, so we're bringing that out. We want to just keep rolling out courses from September onwards, and we'll see how that goes.
Do you find that there's a lot of opportunities in your space that maybe you are like too busy to take advantage of right now?
Oh yeah.
What are those opportunities? Like, because the reason why I'm asking you is because really what we aim to do through this podcast is to inspire people to start something for themselves.
Right.
So like, to give you an example, we operate in the digital marketing space, right? There are millions of businesses all around the world, not even just in South Africa, all around the world that need an online presence, that need a website, that need social media content to be created to communicate their message.
Right.
Now, when I look at South Africa, I look at the potential of every young person owning a laptop and having an internet connection and being able to fulfill that need for anyone around the globe. Now, there's sort of like a disconnect from that reality where we are now to that reality that I'm outlining.
Yeah.
And I always constantly think, like, how do we bridge that gap?
Right.
And that's just an example in my space, but I'm sure there's also opportunities that you can see in your space. So I want to just pick your brain a little bit about how we can kind of connect those gaps.
Yeah. Look, for me, say, for example, right now, things that I wish I could be doing that I don't have time to do is a lot more speaking engagements. I did a couple last year, and it was fantastic being able to speak to an audience and then have people afterwards come up to you and ask more specific questions. I think creating that sense of community with people is such a wonderful way to connect with your ideal customer. It is a perfect way to explain to people face to face what it is that you do. And it goes into that effect of educating your ideal customer, because sometimes your ideal customer doesn't know that they need you, right? Until you explain what it is that you do and what the value is and how it's going to impact them. So speaking engagements are one that I would love to do. So if you have a gig out there, if you would like to know how to design outdoor spaces, I'm your girl. But anyway, I want to do a lot more product development. So part of the work that we do is that sometimes we have to get accessories for the garden, whether it be pots, whether it be steel work, whether it be sculptures and forms and pieces of art. I would love to get into that space, but I think with time, yeah.
Well, there you go. There's a few gaps there. And don't say we didn't plug you. Also, if you're looking to get someone to speak at your events, you've seen how Joy speaks. And I must say, I've gained a lot from this conversation. And I hope everyone else watching it has also gained something from it.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up,
Yeah.
night owl or early bird? I feel like I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyways.
What do you think?
Definitely night owl for sure.
Wow. I think, wow. I wouldn't say night owl. And maybe
Really?
because, and I think it's just because you do see me quite a bit in the night. But I'm most productive early in the morning. And when you see me in the night, it's because I'm trying to wrap things up. I'm
So
not
it's
trying
both.
I'm not coming up with the most brilliant ideas at 11 o'clock. I'm not. I'm just like trying to type things up during the day. But definitely an early morning person. I'm most productive in the morning.
One day when I'm big. Summer or winter?
Summer. Summer, please. Like, I can't wait. I can't wait for winter to end. I'm definitely a summer baby. I'm not productive in the winter. I feel uncomfortable. I'm always trying to be warm, and I think June exams were my worst exams, specifically because of that effect. Yeah.
Roses or succulents?
Roses.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely roses. I love a succulent garden because, when you're looking for a low water, low maintenance type of garden, you're definitely going to be more successful with a succulent garden. I love roses because of the smell, the look. They're not indigenous plants, but I do think they have a place in the garden.
Fruit or flowers?
Sure. That is a very difficult thing to ask a woman. Sure, fruit or flowers? Okay, definitely flowers. Definitely flowers. I love receiving flowers. I love giving flowers. Yeah.
Well, I hope this episode we were able to give you your flowers. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this latest episode of the C.Cast. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. We're trying to achieve a huge mission and we need you to invest in it. The best way to do that is by liking, sharing, and subscribing and leaving a comment down below. By doing that, you help the algorithm understand that we are offering content that is valuable and it will reach more people. There might also be someone out there that just wants to learn a lesson or who might be able to take something away from the podcast. Share it with them. And lastly, if you'd like to be more involved in the community, if you want access to opportunities, knowledge from our experience in the digital marketing space, or to connect with other people who are like-minded and uplifting the continent, for starting businesses and using tech and creativity to make them successful, join the WhatsApp group by scanning the QR code and we'll chat with you there. Until then, bye.